I say, don't take just what you need and don't take a certain percentage, but create more than you need. If
Yeah.
you're creating and expanding to create more food, not only for you, but for the animals, for all the other beings, like you're creating more, then you have everything you need. You don't
Right.
have to worry about, oh, I only take one out of every 10. And
Right.
so that's still an extractive mindset that I'm
Yes.
extracting one out of 10,
Ooh,
as
that's such a
opposed
good
to
perspective.
I'm taking one, but I'm creating 10.
Yeah.
So it's an expansion in that way. And I developed that over a number of years because two examples come to mind.
Today, we're talking about a powerful shift from taking what we need from nature to learning how to create more abundance and what mushrooms can teach us about responsibility, regeneration, and how everything is truly connected. This is the Green Living Now podcast, and I'm your host, Amy Hartshorn. Welcome, Chris.
Hey, thank you.
So, my first question for you is I know you've been working with mushrooms since you were a teenager, which is long before they became really trendy. And I'm curious what you think is the most misunderstood part about fungi today.
There's several misconceptions about fungi. And one of the things that seems to still be persistent, it's once people understand about them a little bit, this kind of goes away, but there's a persistence that mushrooms have to be grown in the dark.
Oh, that's an interesting one. Yes.
Yeah, and it's because the white button industry, they don't actually need light to grow, but they
Mhm.
do need some light to initiate fruiting. And so the white button industry doesn't have to provide that much light. That's oftentimes an input as far as electricity goes
Yeah.
to produce the mushroom. So if they don't have to produce them in light, then they don't do that.
That's interesting. I remember we actually grew shiitake for a little while. I
Mm.
have an organic farm here in Vermont with my husband, and we inoculated logs and we put them in the woods actually, so they weren't in direct sunlight. So I know that they need some amount of light to grow a lot of different types of mushrooms because I've even had the mushroom bags that you can grow indoors and that has
Mhm.
regular daylight exposure. And I was just reading recently, there's this interesting tip of taking your mushrooms that you're going to eat and putting them in the sun so that they absorb the sunlight. And I think that increases the vitamin D. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. And that's one of the things like with you growing shiitakes out in the forest and where you have dappled sunlight,
Right.
just having that dappled sunlight in the forest actually give them more vitamin D than the
Oh,
indoor grown shiitake, the blocks you were talking about. If you grow
yeah.
shiitakes on a block and it's inside and you just have ambient light or light from your fixtures in your house, they're not going to produce as much vitamin D. And what happens is harvesting those mushrooms and then exposing the gills or the tender underside or the spore
Right.
producing surface to the sun exposes more of their ergosterol to UV light. And when you
Huh.
expose that ergosterol to UV light, it converts to vitamin D. All fungi contain ergosterol, and it performs similar functions that our cholesterol does. It's a building block, it's there for repairs, etc.,
Hmm.
all of that. You can think of it as a precursor to vitamin D. So when
Okay.
it's exposed to UV light, it gets converted to vitamin D.
And did I hear you correctly? You said even the gills, the underneath part of the cap
Yeah, it's
should.
actually important to when you harvest the mushroom to expose the gills to the sun because what happens, let's pretend that you had a mushroom and you just put it gill side down or
Right.
spore producing surface side down. It knows that it is cut off from its food source or its source of energy.
Oh,
And so it freaks out and goes into spore production mode. So it just produces as many spores as possible. However, if you flip that same mushroom upside down, the sun will dry up the spore producing surface and then it will start producing vitamin D.
oh, that's so cool. So if I buy organic mushrooms at the store, would it be too late to expose them to sunlight before I ate them? Would it make any difference? Or does it have to be like
No,
right after you harvest?
It does not have to be right after you harvest. As long as they are still alive, you will definitely get some vitamin D production out
Okay.
of them. Oftentimes, even mushrooms that are thicker, take your shiitakes or something along those lines, or even like lion's mane, that
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes are these big pom-pom looking mushrooms, slicing them and then laying them out in the sun or shredding them into pieces and laying, because that's going to expose more of that ergosterol to the
Oh, that
UV
makes
light.
sense.
Yeah.
And so what's that window look like as far as once you've harvested them so they're disconnected from whatever the growing medium is, and how long before you don't get any benefit by putting them in the sun?
I would say I think that's determined by the type of mushroom. I have not seen any conclusive evidence or even any literature on this, on experiments that have tested mushrooms at certain stages after post-harvest, but it seems to me that intuitively, I would say once your mushrooms start to shrivel,
Mm.
you're getting closer to the end because those cells are dying. And so once the cells in the mushroom start to die, then they go into necrosis and they begin to rot, and then they give off scents and molecules that will attract insects. And so once that kind of exchange has started to happen, I think it would still benefit you to put them out in the sun, but I'm not sure exactly where that cutoff point is. But you have stuff like shiitakes that will last a lot longer than oysters.
Right.
So I think that getting your oysters in the sun quicker than you would your shiitakes is important.
Right.
Let's just say if you have a limited amount of space that you can set them in the sun, I would get the ones that tend to go off quicker in the sun.
Cool. So how did you get into this whole world of mushrooms and regeneration?
So the high school I went to here in the Southern Appalachians was your typical post World War II high school. And so
Hmm.
they prepared people for the workforce. So where I went to school, textiles and farming were the two big things. They had carting machines, they had all this stuff. And then in the FFA, Future Farmers of American program, I had Introduction to Agriculture and Mechanics. I had Introduction to Agriculture, Natural Resources. I had Horticulture 1 and 2. So there's really heavily tilted in FFA and agriculture classes.
Ah,
So
that's
the
amazing.
classes that I chose to take in high school, and in that first year when I was a freshman in high school, I had Introduction to Ag and Natural Resources. And so that's where we learned about shiitake production because we studied
Oh my gosh,
forestry.
in high school.
Yeah, so it was in high school, and I asked a cousin of mine who went to the same high school on my mother's side of the family, and I was like, "Hey, they still have the big shiitake log operation there and the greenhouses and stuff?" He's like, "Nope, they don't have any of that anymore."
Oh.
Because it was sometime in the 90s, all that started shifting over into technology and pushing
Hmm.
people to get more involved in the latest tech. And so we've lost some of that training, for that type of thing. And there was even auto mechanics classes there when I was in high
Wow, that
school.
would have been amazing.
Yeah, so I didn't take that. They still had home ec. So if you wanted to learn to bake and do all this stuff, you
Right.
could go in those classes and do that.
Wow.
Those things are
Okay, so you,
important.
yeah, I agree. And so you started by learning about shiitake in high school,
Mhm.
and then how did it go from there?
That was basically all we did was shiitake logs. And so I was interested in other mushrooms. I was like, oh, you can grow shiitakes on logs. This is great. So I learned the basics there that you needed to cut your logs and you needed to inoculate them. Back then,
Right.
it was at 6 weeks. Do not inoculate logs before 6 weeks and do not inoculate them after 6 weeks. 6 weeks is the magic
Hmm.
number. Since then, we've learned that it doesn't necessarily have to be exactly at that 6 week mark, but that gave me some parameters on how to inoculate other species in logs.
To ask
Also,
you a question, Chris.
yeah.
So when you say 6 weeks, is that 6 weeks from the point of inoculation that it fruits?
Oh, no, I'm
No.
sorry. Yeah, I should have clarified there. So from the time the log is cut or the tree is cut until
Oh,
you have an opportunity to inoculate it
oh, I
at
see.
6 weeks, because at 8 to 10 weeks, somewhere in that neighborhood, the chemicals that are in the tree's immune system,
Yep,
those chemicals start to break down or they disperse out
I
of the
see.
ends of the logs. And so you want to inoculate them before other fungi have the opportunity to start to
Break
colonize
down
your
the wood.
log.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah, so from there, essentially, I became very curious about this whole process of inoculating logs and what that looked like for other species. And so I played around with it, but I wasn't too serious about it. Mostly, I did a lot of reading. And you'll remember this was back in the day where you had to go to these big buildings that had these things called books. And that's where
Libraries
people,
and
yeah, people
yes,
went for,
before we had the internet at our fingertips.
I know it totally
Yeah.
was. And so I went and checked out the very few books that I could find in the library in the high school, or went in and read them. I didn't necessarily check them out. When I was supposed to be studying for other things, I would be reading about mushrooms often.
Yeah.
And then once the internet came around, the late 90s, I think was the first time, probably 99 or 2000 was the first time I had been on the internet. And I found out that you could access information about other mushrooms, and it was mostly centered around hallucinogenic mushrooms.
Oh,
And then it eventually started becoming that you could cultivate other mushrooms. And at that point, I'd already owned a few books on mushroom cultivation and had played around with it a lot more. I was building my own lab equipment, so laminar
no
flow
kidding.
hoods and doing things like that. It's just one of those things that I held that line of interest, but I had to do other things for money.
Gotcha.
And it eventually became something around 2011. I started doing nothing but mushroom cultivation.
Wow. And so
And,
which mushrooms are you cultivating or have you been cultivating?
so right now, what we grow is chestnut mushrooms. We grow two different types of oysters, blue oysters, pearl oysters.
Yep.
We also grow shiitakes. We grow reishi, and then we grow cordyceps. We grow, let me see, lion's mane indoors,
Oh, wow.
and then a Japanese oyster called Shimafuri hirataki, which kind of looks like king trumpets. It's a kind of happy medium between a king trumpet and a normal oyster.
Oh, cool.
And so that, and golden oysters as well, but then we do outdoor cultivation too.
Wow. And so are you selling these mushrooms as a whole food or are you turning it into tinctures or something else?
We do tincture, we do double extraction, some of our mushrooms, but not
Okay.
all of them. And then some of them we don't have to cultivate. Take, for instance, turkey tail, because we
Right.
have dead or dying ash trees on the farm here and quite a few of them. And so
Mhm.
the whole time we've been here for 5 years, we have not had to cultivate any turkey tail.
Wow. So you're just
So,
sustainably
yeah,
harvesting them from the land.
yeah, just as ash trees come down and we cut them up for firewood, there's always small limbs that are left over and they just stay on the forest floor and they always grow turkey tail. So we're
That's
harvesting
so
those.
interesting.
So it's things that if they weren't showing up here, we would be cultivating those.
How did you come to select the varieties that you're growing?
That's a good question because there's a lot of cultivators out there who will buy cultures or they will buy spawn to
Yes.
inoculate their logs or their bulk growing system, whether that's straw or sawdust blocks. And here we have a small lab and a spawn room. And so we do all of our own mushroom breeding. We clone stuff from the wild.
Oh, wow.
We improve strains that we have and continue to work with those strains because I
Mhm.
think it's very important. It's the same with seed saving. If you can save your own seeds from your region, they're much
Yeah,
more adapted to the region. And
correct.
so that's what our focus is. Now, the golden oyster that we have and the blue oyster are not native here, but
Mm.
we have bred those and we've cultivated those so that they're acclimated to the region. And I don't know, in Vermont, do y'all have a problem? I know in New York, there's a big problem with golden oysters escaping into the wild and they're just everywhere.
Oh my gosh, I'm not aware of that actually. I
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen golden mushrooms here. I've only seen a few select varieties like
Mm,
Reishi, lion's mane, I think, are in different places. Oh, Torels are popular in the Vermont
mm.
woods. What was the first one that you mentioned? I don't think I've seen or heard about that variety. That it was some
Chestnuts. Yeah,
chestnut. Yeah, what is a
chestnut
chestnut
mushroom.
mushroom?
So chestnuts, they're not native here, so they're a Pholiota adiposa, but we have many Pholiota species that are native. They're just not edible. So y'all probably have some
Oh,
of the
that's
same
interesting.
Foliotas that we have here. There's one
Okay.
called an onion bagel mushroom, and it occurs in clusters, and the caps literally look like they have onion specks from like onion flakes from bagels. And so that's why they call them onion bagel
Interesting.
mushrooms. But there's no edible ones that I'm aware of here. And so the Foliota adiposa, the chestnut mushroom, is an edible one. Occasionally, people will have stomach upset from eating them, but it's
Hmm.
not the vast majority of people. Vast majority of people are okay with eating those as well.
Interesting. Do you have a favorite?
I still love log grown shiitakes.
Going back to your original roots, huh?
Yeah. I mean, if I'm considering what we cultivate a lot of, shiitakes are my favorite in that way, but my most favorite mushroom is maitake or hen of the woods. So that is the mushroom that I prefer over everything else. And then other things start becoming second, like milky cap mushrooms. That's a wild mushroom that cannot be cultivated artificially indoors
Oh,
because
interesting.
yeah, it has a mycorrhizal relationship with certain trees and shrubs.
Okay.
So it cannot be cultivated, but that's a pretty close second. And then things like chanterelles and chicken of the woods start becoming distant thirds.
And so why maitake is your number one?
There's like a deep aroma and flavor to it. And then there's hard to describe. It has a very, not quite chewy, but it has a very meaty texture.
Ooh, that reminds me of the lobster mushroom. Have you tried that one?
Mm. Yeah, we have yes, I've been wild harvesting lobsters for 15 plus years or so.
Oh,
And
wow.
we actually have a lobster patch here on our farm that when we first got here, we were harvesting maybe 10 pounds a week out of it.
Wow.
And I have done some work with it to try to expand the patches. And now we're up to somewhere between 20 to 30 pounds a week. We can
Oh my
oftentimes
gosh.
harvest.
That's
So,
incredible. What
but
kinds of things do you do to expand the production?
lobsters are tricky because I don't know if you know this about lobsters, but it's a mushroom that parasitizes another mushroom.
Oh,
So
I
it
did
takes
not know
an
that.
inedible mushroom, Lactofluus or Lactarius, peppery Lactarius, that is very spicy, acrid taste,
Really?
and it parasitizes it and makes it edible. Or there's Ruchulas that they parasitize as well, and then those go from inedible to edible, delicious mushrooms.
Mm,
And I think this is important for most people if your listeners are interested in doing this is identify the areas that have the same type of slope or the same type of habitat. So you're going to look for the same type of trees or shrubs that are
mm-hmm,
growing with your mushrooms. And
mm-hmm.
then when you harvest them, just pull the mushroom out of the ground and trim the stem butt off. And take that
Okay.
stem butt that is really dirty and it has some mycelium usually still attached to it. Put it in a separate place in your basket or put it in a bag. And then as you're
Okay.
going into these other areas looking for, let's just say lobsters in this case,
Yep.
then you see that same habitat that doesn't have any lobsters. You pull back the leaf litter or the
Oh.
pine needles in this case, you drop them, you cover them up, and give them a little tamp with your foot. And
Oh,
so that's
wow.
just
So
a
you
very
bury them
simple,
completely.
yeah, yeah. You bury them down, and that's the thing about lobsters. They'll oftentimes it'll just show up as a lump, and then you
Yeah.
start pulling back the leaf litter or the pine needles, and there's a lobster hanging out under
Oh,
there.
how cool. Wow. Some of the things that I've learned about mushrooms that I found so fascinating is the sort of the communication system that goes on underneath the soil, and particularly around like helping trees and other plants nearby. Do you know much about that?
Yeah, those mycorrhizal species, there's a lot that we know very little about. Since we don't know a lot about them, it's just, some general jobs that are out there. They're like, oh, they're just decomposers or they're just generalist in some way. But what we know about them is that they can oftentimes be very specialized in what they do.
Yeah.
And the mycorrhizal relationship between fungi and plants, sometimes it's simple, but sometimes it can be very complicated. And so we know that they're the managers of the underground economy, if you want to
Hmm.
think of it in that way. They will move around nutrients. They're really big on cycling CO2. They're really big on sequestering, moving around carbon in the form of sugars or in the form of CO2 or just carbon itself to feed other organisms
Hmm.
so that those organisms in turn give them something back. So, take for instance, there's several different types, but the two main types of mycorrhizals that we talk about are buscular mycorrhizals. Arbuscular mycorrhizals are called that because they actually integrate themselves into the root system of the trees or shrubs or plants. And inside of a cell of the plant, they will create a form that looks like it's an arbuscule. It looks like a
Oh,
tree.
interesting.
If you look at it under a microscope, it just branches out and it looks like a tree. And so that is an exchange site where the tree gives the arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi, it gives them sugar, and the mycorrhizal will bring nutrients to the tree in exchange for these sugars because that's the thing that fungi cannot do, just like us. They can't create their own sugars. And so they have to
Interesting.
get them somewhere else.
Okay.
And so they will literally go out and they will mine minerals off of rock, or they'll break down mineral beds to extract these minerals, and they'll run them back through specialized hyphae.
Wow.
And they'll oftentimes create these, I call them like super highways,
Yeah.
and they will hold on to those nutrients along those super highways. And then as the plant needs them, it feeds them to them. And
Right.
fungi don't do this by themselves. They oftentimes will employ bacteria at the end of their hyphae so that the bacteria can exude acids and enzymes just working in tandem with each other to extract these nutrients. And,
It's
you know, if
absolutely
you look,
magical.
yeah, it's pretty amazing. And then most of the ectomycorrhizals that because we all know those, if you're out in the forest harvesting mushrooms, everybody knows ectomycorrhizals. And so ectomycorrhizals are things like boletes, chanterelles, the ruchulas, the lactarius, like the ones I was just talking about. And so they don't integrate themselves directly into the root system as arbusculars do. They
Mhm.
create a sheath around the root system that's called a
Hmm.
mantle. And that's where their exchange sites are, where they bring in nutrients and then they get their sugars from the tree in that way. It's really amazing. And there is this integrated network that if something is happening to these trees over here and the tree needs certain nutrients or it needs to warn other trees, then that happens
Mm.
through the mycorrhizal network. Is like
Wow.
signals are sent
So it's
out
like
to
an
let.
information highway too,
Yeah, it's very
besides
much like an
transporting
information
nutrients and
highway.
everything. Wow.
Yeah, if you really look at it, it looks very much like a nervous system. In our book, The Mycelial Healer, we talk about the fungal blueprint because fungi
This is
have
a
been
book that you've
around.
written?
This is
Oh,
our book that
oh, say it again, the
Chelsea
name?
Green's the publisher. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, Chelsea Green, awesome. I almost got
Yeah,
a book published with them. So say the title again, please.
The Mycelial Healer.
The Mycelial Healer. Okay.
Yeah, so it's a book mainly about medicinal mushrooms and their medicinal benefits and how to create medicinal double extractions or utilize the medicine in the form of food. We go over 14 different mushroom profiles in the book, and then we also go over in depth cultivation. And
Wow.
so that's what the book is about. But in the beginning, we do talk about the fungal blueprint because fungi diverged about 1 billion years ago. And then they developed a relationship with bacteria and algae on the surface of the planet and created the first soils, the first true
Wow.
soils.
Wow.
So they've been at this for a long time. That relationship gave rise to the first vascular plants. So everything that we have,
Mm.
we owe to that relationship between algae, fungi, and bacteria. And of course,
That,
I have a strong tilt towards mycology, so I'm always like putting the fungi out there up front.
yeah. So you've told us so many amazing facts about mushrooms. Is there one thing that you would love listeners to know about mushrooms and why they're so important? I think you said a lot of things, but what's the number one thing you would love people to take away from this?
That they embody that true connectedness of the planet and how we are all connected.
Mm. Ooh, that's
So,
beautiful.
yeah, that we're all one. Yes, that's absolutely true in spirit, mind and body, because we all participate in this collective consciousness. We all have a similar form, that we all have certain needs around. We have the need to feel safe. We have the needs to have a roof over our head and food to continue to move. But fungi embodies that part, that everything is connected.
Wow. Oh, I love that answer. That's really good. Do you take medicinal mushrooms every day? And if so, which ones?
I do. So most of the time I take cordyceps,
Mhm.
which is a great medicinal mushroom to help increase ATP production.
Oh,
So
yeah.
ATP is adenosine triphosphate. It's what your mitochondria in your cells produce. And I am now 48, getting ready to be 49. And so once we hit the age of like between 36 and 40, our ATP production really starts to drop off.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important to do that. And then also, I take lion's mane most days, and then reishi occasionally.
And for memory
Yeah, lion's mane for
primarily or
it's just
brain
like
function?
brain function. And if you think about us as modern humans, we're still operating on this system that's at least 400,000 years old. We have the same nervous system, roughly the same brain size. Our brain size has shrank a little bit actually, but roughly the same functions. And so now, instead of beating saber-toothed cats off your back, we're now driving in vehicles in crazy traffic. And so we still have the same stress response. And so our
Yes.
nervous system gets stressed. And even
Yes.
if I don't have any TBIs or I don't have any brain function problems, but I
Yep.
think just running maintenance on our nervous system is an excellent idea. It
Oh
just
gosh,
helps
I
us
agree.
continue to, yeah,
Especially with what's happening in the world these days, I feel like many of us are in fight or flight all the time. And so anything we can do to calm the nervous system down, I think is a really important thing to do.
yeah. And this is, I don't know what it was like 100,000 years ago, but we can
Right.
probably safely assume that this is the first time that we've had such information overload.
Mm.
And that has definitely has a huge negative impact on our well-being. And I just encourage people to take a step back, don't get too deep into whatever political views you have. Just take a step back and get a broader view. And are you safe?
Mm.
Are things going well? Do you have a house? Are you warm?
Yeah.
Just be
Yeah.
grateful for the things that you do have. And take lion's
Right.
mane, help smooth out the other parts of your nervous system.
And then the reishi, is that mostly for immune system boosting?
Yeah, Reishi's really good for cancer fighting,
Oh,
is
yes,
immune
that's
system
right.
modulator, blood pressure modulator. There's over 250 medicinal compounds in Reishi, according to species. But the Chinese call it the mushroom of immortality. So
Mm.
that's its name in China. And they call it that for good reason. And
Yep.
that's the interesting thing. If you have low blood pressure or high blood pressure, and you take a pharmaceutical to bring your blood pressure down, usually it will drop out your immune system. And so Reishi
Ooh.
balances both of those things. If one is high and the other one's low, it'll pull them
Oh,
right back
wow.
into where they're supposed to be.
That's
So
amazing.
very interesting stuff.
Wow.
And there's some bitter compounds, and a lot of people don't like it because it's bitter, but those
Yeah.
bitter compounds are oftentimes terpenes or triterpenoids or sesquiterpenes, and those act as histamine blockers. So it's great for people with seasonal allergies or any kind of like inflammation. It's great at reducing inflammation. That's another thing that I've
Mm.
had a few people come to me who's, oh my God, this stuff is so good for inflammation. I don't really have a lot
Wow.
of
Which
inflammation.
would,
And
yeah.
inflammation is one of those
Wow.
things that is the leading cause of all sorts of other diseases and cancers. If you have
Yes.
consistent inflammation and cortisol dumps, that's a recipe for disaster in your life.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good point. In your profile, I know you talk about regeneration. Can you define how you would explain it to the average person? What does it mean to you?
Regeneration, so that's a pretty long conversation.
Okay.
I think that one of the things that I like to talk to people about regeneration is comparable to what has happened with the organic agriculture movement.
Oh,
Back when it started, it was a ragtag bunch of people who were just refusing to use chemicals. And then it caught on, and everybody's, oh, yeah, this is healthier for the soil. And then the more that we learn about soil, the problem's not the soil, it's the amount of microbes that you have in the soil because they free up the nutrients or they
right.
hold on to the nutrients so that they're more plant available. And so with organic agriculture, once the USDA and big ag got a hold of it, it went sideways.
Yeah.
And so that's a thing too. Like now I go in the grocery store and it's the commodification of things that are good. And it's
Mm-hmm.
the industrialization of those things that are good. And
Mm-hmm.
true regeneration isn't some label that some big ag or some
Yeah.
corporation can just slap on a product to get you to
Right.
buy it.
My language, Chris. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, good. That's fantastic.
Yeah. And it's an interesting topic that I've been starting to begin the conversation about. For example, I go to Costco periodically because they have a lot of organic food.
Hmm.
And one of the things that I've noticed that's so frustrating to me is there is this incredibly delicious organic broccoli that's frozen that comes in these big bags, but they come in individual plastic bags that you're supposed to microwave or boil. And I'm thinking, wait, this makes no sense. Why would you destroy this beautiful organic broccoli by putting it in the microwave in a plastic bag or boiling it in a plastic bag? So that's where that discernment needs to happen for us, that people who are trying to be health conscious and they see this great looking bag of organic broccoli and they don't necessarily think about how they're preparing it and how that actually might be detrimental because we've
Hmm.
been sold this belief system that just because it says organic, it's good, but we don't necessarily think beyond that. And then there's big organic versus small organic, right? Like we're a small family farm versus one of the big agri companies that's growing both organic and conventional these days, it seems. But yeah, can you speak a little bit about that type of, because you're starting to get into that about sort of the commodification. And you're absolutely right about when the USDA got into the whole organic standard arena, they wanted to get rid of the main things that made organic better, right? They wanted to allow GMO seeds, genetically modified organism seeds. They wanted to allow sewage sludge on the land. And I think irradiation was another piece that they were trying to
Mm.
push. And thank God there was a huge consumer blowback, and everyone said, no way, that's not what we want.
Yes. Yeah, I think that action of what you described, what they were after, shows you how deep big ag is in
Yeah.
bed with the USDA. If there's some corporation that's funding something, like you're not going to push back against them because oftentimes, like if you're a government employee or you've been hired to do this job and then big ag is doing this, and it's like next thing you know, you leave your government job and then you've got some cushy office job
Whole
for big
revolving
money.
door thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. It's 100% that. And what my wife Catherine and I talk a lot about is what is that true regeneration? And that
Mm.
true regeneration isn't like you're talking about getting individually wrapped broccoli florets from a place that has a stamp on it that says organic, but it's been shipped from China or California all the way to Vermont or all the way to North Carolina here. And so that true regeneration, I think, is more that drive for
Yes.
locally produced food and educating people in ways that show them that you can go beyond organic. So
Mhm.
take, for instance, like some of the things that we do here is like with the mycorrhizals. This ties back into the mycorrhizals that I was talking about.
Yeah.
The Korean natural farming movement is starting to catch on. I don't know if you know about the Jadam
Ooh. Huh.
methods. So they are all about cultivating organisms.
Okay.
And some of their methods that I've tried that are just like, for me here, they're horrible. They just increase all sorts of pathogens. But some of the
Ooh.
things, like take for instance, no-till farming is, I think that is another step towards that regeneration because you're helping build the microorganisms in the soil. And
And just
then,
for listeners to understand, a healthy soil has these live microorganisms versus a dead soil, which I would call just dirt, which is what most conventional farms have, dirt that holds plants in place that then get doused with chemicals. But yeah, continue.
yeah, yeah. So truly regenerative, I feel, is a combination of all these things that somewhat can be mechanized a little bit, but
Yeah.
not very much. It still takes our shadow over it to make sure that things are working properly. And I
Mm,
think to have truly nutritionally dense food, then we have to be involved. And so there's also
I
this
agree.
piece for me that is it's become a serious passion of mine. I don't know, in the past couple of years. I usually think about things for a long time before I even pull the trigger on talking about them.
Okay.
But indigenous fire cultural burning is very
Oh,
important.
yeah.
Okay, this was a thing that when Europeans arrived, I've read a bunch of Hernandez de Soto's journal entries because when I was a teenager, I was very curious about especially Cherokee weapons. And so I was going through
Mm.
journals looking for any type of weapons or descriptions or any things that he was talking about as far as weapons goes. But now that I'm older, I've looked at it from a different way because they talk a lot about the food.
Huh.
They talk a lot about coming up from Florida, coming into what's now North Carolina, and like all the things that they observed. DeSoto came through with, I think, 500 or 700 people. And out of that 500 to 700 men, never once talked about going through any part of the forest that was hard to manage. It was open, park like setting. They
Huh.
constantly talked about park like settings. Oh, it was like a park, there's all these huge trees. The only places they talked about they had a hard time was fording some of the rivers.
Huh.
And they talked about the abundance of food, the abundance of game, the abundance that all the native people had. When he encountered the Cherokee, he was like, had these huge vessels full of bear fat, rendered bear fat that was like butter.
Wow.
And there's also acorn oil, hickory nut oil. Like they were masters of their
Amazing.
environment. And fire was a huge part of that.
Yeah.
And managing the landscape with fire also returns those nutrients back to the soil very quickly. And I
Right.
ran across some literature recently about fungi the first 0 to 6 hours after a fire. Mycorrhizal fungi start taking up those nutrients and holding on to those nutrients. And then the most important period is about 48 hours after, especially if you get a rain event.
Yeah.
Then it washes it down into the soil. The mycorrhizal fungi are there and they hold on to those nutrients. And then they recycle those right back to the same plants that had lost that leaf litter. And you don't suffer those devastating fires. And
Mm.
you keep pest problems down. You keep things like ticks. So we have two Chinese chestnut trees here on the farm. And last year, under one of the chestnut trees, during the month, somewhere around in April, that's when the chestnut weevils emerge out of the ground. And so I was like, oh, I'll burn off all the leaves underneath the chestnut tree during that month to
Okay.
try to keep the chestnut weevil population down.
Okay.
So I did that under one tree. The other tree down in the field, I did not do that under.
Hmm.
And so the one tree, substantially less chestnut weevil infestation.
Wow. So it
So
worked.
there's certain periods of time that things need to be burned for certain reasons.
Right.
And there's a lot of that information that we've lost. We've lost it through war and famine and removals and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things that I think that with technology and with the studies that we're able to do, we can study these things and regain some of that information. But our government need to get out of the way so that we can practice these things
Agreed.
a little
It's funny
bit
because I
more.
just saw a YouTube video talking about how Native Americans would do controlled burns, is I think what you're saying, right? Because you don't want it to
Yeah,
be devastating everything. But yeah, and I think that's where bringing back the ancestral knowledge, which used to be shared in the form of storytelling and verbal communication, I think originally is such a powerful thing to bring back because there was so much wisdom and we were living in harmony with nature so much more before the big revolutions that we've had with industrial and agricultural and whatnot. Huh, very inspiring. So, is there a question that you wish that I had asked you that you hope that most people would like to hear right now?
Catherine and I did an interview 2 weeks ago, and it's a thing that came up in that interview, and it's about people having an awareness around what they're doing. And this person we were doing the interview with had said, "Oh, you're on your ancestral homeland." So I'm a member of the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians. And
Oh, cool.
they said, "Oh, you're on your homeland, so you can wild harvest the ways that you wild harvest, but I'm not. So I don't do that." And I'm like, I never thought of that before. And so we had a conversation after that call. And so I would like for people to know that wild harvesting things, and not only wild harvesting, there's this notion that it's just wild harvesting, and it's not, it's actually co-creating. So I say, don't take just what you need and don't take a certain percentage, but create more than you need.
Like you did
And
with
the
the
next
lobster
person
mushrooms,
create.
right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's a good example.
Yeah.
If you're creating and expanding and using fire on the landscape to create more food, not only for you, but for the animals, for all the other beings, like you're creating more, then you have everything you need. You don't
Right.
have to worry about, oh, I only take one out of every 10. And
Right.
so that's still an extractive mindset that I'm
Yes.
extracting one out of 10,
Ooh,
as
that's such a
opposed
good
to
perspective.
I'm taking one, but I'm creating 10.
Yeah.
So it's an expansion in that way. And I developed that over a number of years because two examples come to mind. I'm out harvesting chanterelles and I run across a game warden and he like takes my basket and he's, "You can't be out here harvesting this many." In North Carolina on game land, you can harvest for personal consumption, but
Okay.
you can't commercially harvest. And I only had about a pound and a half of chanterelles, and I will eat that by myself.
Right. He thought that was too much.
Yeah, he thought that was too much. And he took my basket and he took pictures of it, took pictures of my truck, took pictures of me. And I got
Wow.
mad. I was really mad at him because I'm like, that's one of the things that if you talk to any native people, they're like, "Oh, yeah, we're just told no, you can't harvest here. You can't do this. You can't harvest your traditional food.
Oh my
You can't."
gosh.
If you start looking in it, all sorts of people going to court, being charged with all these things. And so it's something that's done often. And
Hmm.
so I told him, I was like, "You're stepping on my rights. You're
Hmm.
stepping on my rights to be able to harvest chanterelles here for myself to eat. You're stepping on my right." And so that's a
Yep.
big thing you hear too is like rights. And
Yep.
I started shifting that because that stem butt method is one of the things I'd been doing in those chanterelle patches either. And I told him, I was like, "You have no idea what I'm doing." And that's all I left of that. I
Yeah.
didn't tell him how I was propagating these up
Oh,
this one creek
yes.
that he, yeah, so I'm increasing the amount of chanterelles that are in the forest
Yeah.
or attempting to. And so I told him, like, "You're stepping on my rights." And so he just told me, "Go home." He said, "I don't want to catch you back in here, blah, 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 all that
Oh
kind of
my
stuff."
gosh.
And I started thinking about that. And I thought about that for a couple years. And I'm like, we always talk about our rights, but we don't talk about responsibility. And it's just, this isn't a right. This is a responsibility I have to these beings that I'm harvesting, that
Yes.
I need to propagate them. And that's that responsibility. And so, like, shifting that mindset from extraction to creation
Yes.
and from rights to responsibilities. Because when you start telling people they have a responsibility to the forest, then there's not these
Different.
arbitrary lines that you can't do X, Y, and Z in the forest. It's, no, the forest depends on us
Yeah.
if we're
Yes.
going to eat.
Yeah.
It depends on us to be co-creators if we're
Exactly.
going
Oh,
to
that's
eat
such a
things.
good example. So, did you go back?
Yeah, I've been back, but
You haven't seen
unfortunately,
him, have you?
he was really young. He looked like he
Yeah.
may have been doing steroids. He
Ooh.
was really jacked up.
Oh,
So looking
testosterone
for,
going on there.
yeah, a lot of unnatural testosterone. And unfortunately, Hurricane Helene came through that area, yeah, last year, 2024, and really cleared out
Ooh.
the forested areas along the rivers there.
Oh, bummer.
So I haven't been back down there since. But it was also another place that I would harvest pawpaws. There's a lot of paw trees down there.
Huh. Wow. So I think you said two examples. The first one you told us about the chanterelles and the testosterone guy. Was there a second?
Yeah. Well, the other one was it was a different area in another state controlled place. And the guy was just like, you can't harvest in here. And I guess they did change the rules and regulations around that at some
Mhm.
point of an area. And I was like, I've already picked these. Can I just take them home and eat them? And he's really young. He looked like
Yeah.
maybe he had just gotten his permit
Oh
to
my gosh,
to
like
have a
15,
pistol
16?
on him. He was like 21 or 22,
Oh, okay.
and he was like, "I don't know if those are edible." And I'm like, "Dude, these are edible. I've been eating these, like, longer than he had been alive," but I didn't
Yep,
say that
yep.
to him. So he made me dump out the chanterelles that I had in the basket there and a couple boletes, and he just told me, "I don't wanna be responsible for you poisoning yourself." And I'm like,
He's not.
"Okay."
Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. Well, I
So
totally
it's
get where you're coming from as far as the whole idea of the government getting in the way of these kinds of choices. And it's more than just a choice. It's, like you said, a responsibility to continue to grow these amazing foods, not just for us humans, but obviously for whatever other creatures are eating them, and just enhance the whole natural environment instead of, like you said, the extractive way that a lot of humans are operating.
yeah, and that is a part of it that if you don't learn to co-create, grow, and all of this, you're still depending on the industrial system.
That's
And
true.
that's the big part of this is and that was the thing that, Catherine and I's takeaway from the other interview was like, "Oh, that is the guilt mechanism to keep you locked into buying things from pharmaceutical companies and
Yes.
from big ag." And
Right.
so that is why and it comes from a good place. It pulls on people's heartstrings like, "Oh, you're
Yes.
not native to this area, so you can't do these things, and you need to not participate in this." And it's a hurdle or it's a way to block people. And if there's no native people left in your area, it's just you need to get in touch with native people who exist on the same type of landscape and learn from them of what their
Yeah.
traditional harvesting methods are.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great
And
idea. Should do a
yeah.
workshop like that on the farm.
Yeah, oh, it'd be great.
It's a great
Yeah.
idea. Wow. Chris, this has been such an incredible conversation. I really admire what you've been doing, and the mindset that you have adopted is really powerful, and I hope more people adopt what you're doing. And it's given me some ideas of ways that I might enhance things too, instead of just plucking vegetables and planting more. And but yeah, this is great. Any final thoughts that you want to share?
I think that just the thing that we talked about earlier is that we're all connected and we all use this same system on the planet in some
Yeah.
shape or form. There's nuances, but we all use this same system to feed ourselves. And it's almost like driving. It's just like we have
Mhm.
to respect those rules of the road so
Mhm.
that we all can get to our destination safely. And that's what's going on here. How do we ratchet up this next level? And I think that mushroom cultivation is a great place to start because it's been such a teacher for me on the
Mm,
interconnectedness of all of this.
yeah.
And I think that's the thing is like people truly seeing the actual physical interconnectedness of it
Yeah.
is such a big teacher for a lot of people. So that's the kind of
Agreed.
thing I would like to try to encourage people to look out for.
Wow, that's great. How do people reach you?
They can reach us through our website, theforestpharmacy.com, and pharmacy is spelled like farm,
Oh, cute.
Farm.
Yep.
So they can reach us through there. We just launched the beginning of this month a year-long mushroom certification course.
Ooh.
And we have a beginner course that's 3 months long. And then we have the rest of the course that is 9 months. So it's a full year long. You can opt in for the first 3 months or you can do the whole thing. We
Wow.
also are going to be doing some wild co-tending meetups, classes, and then we also have classes here on the farm, and our book, The Mycelial Healer, is out there. It has a lot of this
Awesome.
information in it, but
Cool.
that's the best way to reach us is through the website. Totally easy way to get in touch. And whatever you want to do as well, Amy, if you have questions about things, feel free to shoot us
Yeah.
an email. about some of the co-creation stuff. I always encourage
Yeah. Well,
people.
I'm going to have to get your book first off.
Great.
Yeah, that sounds great. But yeah, when I come up with questions, I will definitely send them on to you.
Okay, fantastic.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me on.